Tonight, I want to talk to you about violence on Easter worshipers. I don't know if you saw that in the press and all the talking heads. They refused to call anybody Christians that were killed. They were Easter worshipers, which I spent all day yesterday worshiping Easter. I want to take you back to New Zealand. Yes, we're going to get to Sri Lanka, but I want to show you an article that came out in Sri Lanka right after the New Zealand shooting. Now, this is a Sri Lankan news site, The Morning, and they bemoan that Sri Lanka's already stringent gun laws may not be stringent enough. Writing, soon after the New Zealand incident, which raised a number of questions in the international arena regarding the status of gun control laws, a simple question comes to the minds of every citizen in Sri Lanka. Do we have adequate gun control laws? Well, do we? Well, I think we can all guess. They said, unlike some countries, Sri Lanka doesn't have a free gun culture, and strict laws are applicable to those who obtain guns with proper license. To say that they kind of have strict gun laws is a little like saying, I don't know, Glenn, you haven't gained that much weight. You were 7.5 pounds when you were born? You haven't let yourself go. Okay, what are the gun laws? Well, if you happen to be a Sri Lankan citizen, I'm sorry for that, but let's say you want to own a gun. What do you have to do? Well, you have to prove that you have a genuine reason to own a gun. And those genuine reasons include crop protection, self-defense and the protection of property, sports, i.e. hunting, private security agencies and public institutions, and state-owned firearms for those people that serve in parliament. The following are automatically ineligible, and this is straight off the government website. Ready? Old people, medical unfit, and small children. Okay, medically unfit. I think I'm probably pretty good with that. I'd like to see the definition. Small children, if we're talking 6, probably. I'm not really even, I don't want my 13-year-old carrying a gun. Old people. What is your definition of old people? Most applications are rejected in Sri Lanka. Odds are you would be too. If somehow your application is approved, the Sri Lankan Ministry of Defense then decides exactly what kind of gun you're going to be allowed to have. Now, you're also only allowed a certain number of bullets, and you're accountable for every single one of them. You have to report every bullet that you fire, and then you have to reapply for the license every single year. Now, as you would expect, the government monitors gun owners closely, and they are remarkably efficient at seizing guns. In the Sri Lankan article I mentioned earlier, the author notes that police had recently arrested a suspect over the possession of a Bora 12 type firearm without a license and 5 rounds of live ammunition, and that 8 rounds of ammunition were also seized. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. According to statistics, the police have seized 1,212 illicit firearms in 2018 in different parts of the country. Where did those guns come from? Among them were 32 pistols, 1 AK-47 assault rifle, 7 repeater guns, 87 12-bore shotguns, 38 Galkata, I don't even know what that is, 22 revolvers, 191 T-56 assault rifles, 738 trap guns, and 96 others. This is what they were worried about in Sri Lanka. The shooting in Christchurch, New Zealand, provoked this response all over the world. Immediately after the shooting, the entire world knew a couple of things. White man, bad. Killing Muslim, white man, Christian, worse. Okay? Everybody gathered at a mosque to worship, and without blinking, the New Zealand Prime Minister donned a hijab and spoke in Arabic and mandated nationwide Islamic prayer and made sweeping measures to the nation's gun laws. Well, now that hatred will be fixed. I want to make it really clear. In New Zealand, what happened? Tragic, awful, shouldn't happen anywhere. But let's also look at it for what it was. the work of one demented psychopath and a self-avowed white supremacist who literally admitted to orchestrating the attack in an attempt to sow discord in the Western world and inflame tensions in America specifically. It was not the work of an organization. It was one guy. Yet the media jumped to shame and rebuke white men, causing, oh my gosh, discord here in America. They rebuked white men, particularly white Christians everywhere. By the way, did you know that the New Zealand shooter was an atheist? Yeah. So flash forward to yesterday. It's Easter Sunday. One of the world's worst terrorist attacks since 9/11. The aggressors? 7 suicide bombers from the National Tawhid Jamaat, whatever. It's a little-known radical Islamic organization. They were responsible for the bombings. A government official said the group had help from an international network. So we had an atheist, white, crazy psychopath who worked alone and actually got the press and the media to do everything that he wanted, right? Here we have a group aided by another group, and the media's not really even talking about it because yesterday was a day of peace. It actually is a day of peace and hope of the resurrection of man. Despite our darkest moments, we can live again. We can be forgiven of our sins. We can do horrible things and be forgiven. Wow, what a concept. The day celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ, not the Easter Bunny, not eggs. It's a sacred day for Christians. But yesterday became a day of blood and ash and screaming and loss. 9 bombings, nearly 300 people dead, 500 wounded, all chosen specifically for their religious belief, literally targeted at their churches. Remember, what happened in New Zealand, really bad. What happened? Crazy guy targets religious people because of their religion, kills a bunch. What happened yesterday? A bunch of crazy people, along with a crazy organization, conspire, work together to specifically target people because of their religion, and many, many, many more die. But the media has largely treated it with, it's just kind of a kicker story. There's none of the heat and the vigor that we saw coming out of the Christchurch shooting. None of the sanctimonious lecturing, why we've got so many Muslims who are being targeted. Well, I don't know what to do about it. Take away their guns? Somehow or another, an event that was intentionally organized to target a religious group has been branded as an isolated event by a ragtag group of local bandits. The one where it was one guy, that is all over the world we're seeing that. This one? Nah, nothing to see here. Just from basic arithmetic perspectives, the whole thing doesn't make sense. Well, I could quote everybody's favorite congressman and say, well, we know over the weekend some people did something. And yes, they did. And golly gee, Wally, when mom and dad come home, they're going to be really smoked. Sri Lanka has been plagued by violence throughout its history. It has been nearly a decade since the end of the Civil War, and yesterday had nothing to do with the Sri Lankan politics and everything to do with religious persecution. Christians, not Easter worshippers, but Christians were specifically targeted. There is no doubt on that. Christians, worshipers of Jesus Christ, believers in the Christus, Christianity, Christians, not Easter worshipers. Easter worshipers seems to make writers and the press feel really, really comfortable because then they don't have to talk about those crazy Christians. But that was the descriptor of the day yesterday. Check out the unequivocal responses from Obama and Clinton after the Christchurch shooting. Look at these. It's Holy Weekend for many faiths. We have to stand united against hatred and violence. I'm praying for everyone affected by today's horrific attack on Easter worshipers. Obama condemns attacks on Easter worshipers. Here, this one. Look at it. It's completely different here, isn't it? The attacks on tourists and Easter worshipers. On a day of redemption and hope, the evil of these attacks on Easter worshipers. Well, excuse me, Christians. And where is the outcry that this has to be stopped? And not by taking bombs away, because they've already taken all the guns away in Sri Lanka. What are you going to do? Take their bombs away too? People will find ways to kill other people, especially when it's festering hatred that for some reason or another, nobody wants to see, claim, or lance. Christians face a new persecution, a growing persecution. As Dennis Prager, who will be here with us in a few minutes, wrote in an article following the Notre Dame Cathedral, quote, the symbolism of burning of Notre Dame Cathedral, the most renowned building in Western civilization, the iconic symbol of Western Christendom, is hard to miss. It's as if God himself wanted to warn us in the most unmistakable way that Western Christianity is burning, and with it, Western civilization. Every major Western and one major non-Western social and intellectual force has conspired to rid Europe of Christianity and the civilization that it produced. You know, can I just say, before we throw everything out, I mean, because I'm all for a good spring cleaning, but you know, I don't know, the bed's still pretty good. Couch is pretty good. I don't know, I like the TV. Can we get rid of the knickknacks that are cluttering up everything? Yes. But before we throw everything out, we should look at the world that Christianity actually built. But are we going to do that? No. No. Should we do that? Yeah, absolutely. Are we going? No. You know, yesterday we marked a miracle. Jesus performed a miracle by literally rising from the dead. But America, we are so close to being lost into nothingness that I think for Christians to even stand up and say, hey, wait a minute. I think just the action of them standing up and saying, hey, wait a minute, we're being targeted, is going to look like a miracle. You know, it's like the old poem. First they came for the trade unionists, but I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't stand up. Then they came for, you know how this poem goes? First they came for the Christians, and I was a Christian, but I didn't stand up. And that's a bad poem, but it's coming our way unless we stand with peace and love and yet stand with real backbone and conviction and name the enemy. The enemy is not the gun, it is not the bomb. The enemy is a distortion of religious faith. It's not all Muslims, it's Islamists, those who believe it is their way or the highway. And I would say the same thing if there were a bunch of Christians who said it's my way or the highway. They have no place in polite society. They have no way of adapting. We cannot coexist. Stand up in defense of your faith.